guys! What's up? Alpha Lion Simba here, and welcome to the next part of sentencing Disney villains for their crimes. As always, I am your judge, jury, and executioner. But first, let's summon our bailiff, counselor, and prosecution lawyer, Jiminy Cricket. Thank you, Alpha Lion Simba. As always, I'm here to help you with sentencing these villains. Thanks, Jiminy. And we'll be continuing the Dark Age era because this time we're sentencing the villains from The Fox and the Hound, The Black Cauldron, and The Great Mouse Detective. So, with no further ado, court is now officially in session. Our first film in this week's docket is The Fox and the Hound, which means that our first villain to stand trial is Amos Slade. Firstly, he always tries to hunt Todd down when he thinks he's up to trouble, even though Todd really ain't. Yup, which is a charge of animal cruelty. Not to mention, the first time he tried to hunt Todd, when Todd tried to retreat to the safety of Widow Tweed's truck, Amos kept shooting at him, even firing into Widow Tweed's milk cans. Yup, and these gunshots could have easily gotten Tweed hurt or killed, which will get Slade charged with reckless endangerment. And years later, when Todd is all grown up and living in the game preserve, Slade breaks into the game preserve to try and hunt him down, which gets him charged with both criminal trespassing and poaching. So therefore, I sentence Amos Slade to 20 years in prison. And when he gets out, he'll have to attend a court-ordered anger management class. Well, sir, Widow Tweed did say that temper was going to get Slade into a lot of trouble someday, and she was right, since it landed him in the clink. Up next is The Black Cauldron. Now, this is often regarded as the black sheep of Disney films, but still, its villains have to stand trial for their crimes, starting with Orgok, Ordu, and Orwen, the Witches of Morva. Now, let's start with the fact of all those frogs that were found in their cottage. Those were people that the witches had turned into frogs. So, that gets them a charge of kidnapping. Not to mention, they cheated Taran out of his sword so that he could get the Black Cauldron, which can get them charged with extortion. And for this, Orgok, Ordu, and Orwen are sentenced to 10 years of community service. They're going to start by rounding up all them frogs and changing them back into people. Up next is the Horned King's right-hand goblin, Creeper. Now, given that he is the Horned King's second in command, right off the bat, that's a charge of aiding and abetting. Not to mention, he imprisons Taran and his friends, so that can be accounted to wrongful imprisonment. And, of course, he threatened Henwen with red-hot tongs if she didn't reveal the Black Cauldron's location. So, that's a charge of animal cruelty. With all this in mind, I hereby sentence Creeper to 13 years in prison. Up next is another one of Disney's scariest villains, the Horned King. First up, he captures Tyron, Eilonwy, and Fluter, and even prior to the events of the film, he had already captured Princess Eilonwy to use her bauble to try and find the Black Cauldron. That gets him charged with kidnapping. And he also captures Henwen and has her tortured to try and figure out the location of the Black Cauldron, getting him charged with animal cruelty. Plus, his act of resurrecting the Cauldron born via Cauldron gets him charged with necromancy. And towards the end of the film, he tried to kill Tyron for foiling his plans, which gets him charged with attempted murder. With all this in mind, I sentence the Horned King to the death penalty. The execution means, well, I think this is one of those things that it's better not to know. So, Alpha, my friend, what's the final film in this week's docket? Elementary, my dear Jiminy. It is The Great Mouse Detective. We're going to start with Fidget, Ratigan's peg-legged bat henchman. Well, he is Ratigan's main helper, so right off the bat, that's a charge of aiding and abetting. Plus, he kidnaps Mr. Flaversham and later Olivia for Ratigan's plan. That's 2 counts of kidnapping. Not to mention, in the toy store, he stole all the soldier uniforms to help disguise Ratigan's other henchmen. That's a charge of theft. And when Ratigan was ready to pull off his plan, Fidget was the one to feed the queen to Felicia. That's a charge of attempted murder. Right. And with all this in mind, I sentence Fidget to 13 years in prison without parole. Our final villain for this week is Professor Ratigan. First up, he has Flaversham kidnapped for his own nefarious plan and makes him construct a robot version of the Queen. That's charges of both kidnapping and criminal coercion. And later, he has Olivia kidnapped to try and force Flaversham into cooperation. That's another count of kidnapping, as well as blackmail. And he has one of his henchmen eaten by Felicia just because he called him a rat by accident. That's a charge of murder. Oh, and one more thing. Some lost lyrics to his song mentioned that the infamous Tower Bridge job involved him throwing innocent civilians into the Thames River and shooting any who resurfaced. So we can add more counts of murder to his docket. Yup. And his whole plan of wanting to take over Mousedom is a charge of treason. And he also gets 4 charges of attempted murder. First, when he almost fed Fidget to Felicia. Then, when he tried to kill Basil and Dawson with that big trap. Then later, when he had Fidget try to feed the Queen to Felicia. And when he fought against Basil on the top of Big Ben. Not to mention, when he kidnapped Olivia for the 3rd time, he also took her around in his blimp at a very dangerous speed. So, that's a charge of child endangerment. Yup, with all this in mind, I sentence Ratigan to the death penalty. The means? His own trap.
Twang, thunk, splash.
Well, that was it. The latest part of sentencing Disney villains for their crimes. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And again, I'd like to thank Jiminy for his help. No problem, Alpha. As always, it was a pleasure. And as always, stay tuned for next week, as next week will mark the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. But in the meantime, this session of court is now officially adjourned.